Welcome back to 3F, Faith, Family, and Freedom. I'm Bobby Allison.
Hallo, meine Lieblings, ich bin Matteo.
That's Matteo. I'm the psychologist. He's the theologian. Thanks for joining us again. We're going to do some rip from the headlines, the Law and Order old school rip from the headlines type deal today. We figured we'd talk a little bit about the latest and greatest coming out about systemic racism. So let's get started.
3F is a psychologist and theologian providing a much-needed commentary on the three most essential elements of life: faith, family, and freedom.
So yeah, rip from the headlines. We've got a headline out of Minnesota today. Minnesota middle school will eliminate Fs to combat systemic racism.
Finally. Finally.
I know I hate Fs. Whenever I'd gotten one in school, I always felt like an abject failure. And then I actually tried harder next time. So now kids won't have to do that. They won't have that opportunity. I think it's a great idea personally.
In all seriousness, I think that is one of the most racist headlines I've heard in a long time. To combat systemic racism. So you're basically saying, and it bothers me to have to even say what they're basically saying, is that if you're black, you're predisposed to Fs and bad grades. I mean, that's just a racist statement. So we're going to eliminate the Fs that you are more prone to, so that the system won't be as racist.
Right.
That's pretty sick.
So one could make that extrapolation. So this is from Sunrise Park Middle School in White Bear Lake, Minnesota. So they're going to eliminate the F from the grading scale.
Why has the bear got to be white?
That's interesting. So that would imply a polar bear.
I say we get rid of the Fs and we make it a black bear to combat white privilege and systemic racism.
So Minnesota seems to be the tip of the spear, or at least one of the tips of the spears for leftist activism and philosophy. Of course, Minnesota is home to Ilhan Omar, all of the was it the George Blake or the who's the guy that passed away, the police guy,
the lieutenant, the African American,
the guy that was on drugs that died, and then there was a whole uproar of George
Floyd.
Was it George Floyd? I'm
the main
conflating.
One that started everything.
Yes, and then there was
and you're automatically going to be labeled as racist that you can't even remember the guy's name.
I can't remember his name. He was so important beforehand. I mean, of course we should know George Floyd. So yeah, that's where all that went down. Minnesota habitually reelects flaming leftists as their default at the current time. So it makes sense that this would be an area of the world that we would get this elimination of Fs.
Now, what's a little funny, if I can say so, is Ilhan Omar took flack, rightfully so, when she referred to 9/11 and said that thing that those people did, or that some people did.
Yeah, it
was something like that. But now, in response to her, you've just said that thing with that George guy.
so you're saying I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
So I will be canceled. Right. So,
but hey,
so be it.
When it's a lose-lose game and the deck's stacked against you, you don't worry about that kind of thing.
Well, I mean, George Floyd was like nobody knew about him beforehand. So it's like, and then all of a sudden he's famous because he's tragically killed and stuff like that. So, I mean,
well, and what's interesting is, and I can't remember his name, but when you were blanking on George Floyd's name, I assumed we were talking about someone more minor and minuscule. So I thought you were,
virtue signaling.
No, this is bad. Not that this life is minor and minuscule. It's terrible. But I don't know if it was Minnesota, but there was an African American police. I think he was either a chief or a lieutenant that was out either trying to help or protect a store or do something, and he was killed by looters and rioters, and we, for the most part, don't know his name because he was glossed over and nobody talked about it. But if Black Lives Matter, why don't we know his name as much as George Floyd's name? This was a family man. had at least a daughter. I know they interviewed an older daughter towards the end of his career, and his life is tragically taken by these idiots who are rioting and looting, and it was a black life. So if Black Lives Matter, let's get his name out there and on posters and spray painted on walls, because that Black Life matters.
I think it's obvious that Black lives only matter if it supports the leftist cause.
Absolutely.
That's just the clear. And yeah, I apologize for not knowing the name, but but the main topic here is the Fs. We're losing Fs. Something heretofore has motivated us away from it. So the point is not to get Fs. You try your best in school to get A's, of course. And so you can kind of imagine the fallout here. So it's now impossible to fail in school. We've been through a generation where every kid gets a trophy. Now, apparently every kid gets a passing grade no matter what.
So by taking out the F, we're eliminating the ability to fail, or does D now become the failure? And we're just going to start failure with D instead of
no, I think that's
F, or we're taking away the ability to fail, period, in other words, so that you just always pass on to the next grade.
We've heard that math is racist, right?
I've heard them say that.
So
yes.
this systemic racism theory posits that because blacks or certain minority groups are more likely to struggle at various subjects or get Fs, for instance, then the F itself is part of this systemic racism model and therefore has to be eliminated, right? So they're getting their wish in it. So everything so it's the Ibram X. Kendi model. Any type of dynamic that shows a discrepancy highlights the effects of systemic racism. So it might be gone now, especially for sure in Minnesota.
And don't you see where that in and of itself is racist? I mean, let's wake up here, people. When you say that this group of people that might be struggling with something, rather than helping them to get past that, we're going to do something that just keeps you right where you are and doesn't call it what it is. That is a group of elite people trying to keep you controllable and from getting any better. And I mean, am I crazy here? Is it not the most racist thing in the world? You're the psychologist. Am I nuts here?
I've evaluated this fella.
I know I'm crazy. Well, am I wrong is what I should say.
It used to be called the soft bigotry of low expectations. I believe that was something that came out of the Bush administration. So the soft bigotry of low expectations. That's what you have here. So by eliminating the F, because maybe more black kids in schools get Fs than other populations or other white kids, so they're somehow going to even the playing field now. No, that just means that you're lowering the standards, so we all suffer.
It's so patronizing.
Yeah,
it's so patronizing. You're not capable of doing better. So to make it better for you, we will take the Fs away that you just can't help but get. That's the most offensive thing I've ever heard.
And it's not going to affect elites. They'll still go to Harvard. They'll still go to Princeton and Yale. It's just going to affect these poorer communities, these minority communities, or just the general communities like the ones that we live in, that you're not going to be able to ask a kid to try harder. You're not going to help. You're not going to be able to help kids that are struggling because we won't know that they're struggling. So we're going to essentially eliminate one of our best ways of identifying a struggling student when they get Fs. So that's typically a sign that either they're experiencing a lot of neglect and abuse at home, for instance, or that they've got some learning issues that we need to take care of and accommodate. Now we're not going to see those things as much. We're going to have to ask more of our teachers to identify students that need more help. We're going to ask more of our communities to accommodate and facilitate people that don't have skills necessary because they've never been pushed.
So if we're taking away the Fs for this reason off the bottom, do we also take away the A's off the top? So that the Asian kids don't make the rest of us look bad?
Shout out to John Lee.
Yeah, I love you, bro. If we're doing racist grade changing and we're being racist about it, well, let's remove the A's for the same reasons, so the whites and the black kids all have a better chance.
Yeah. Hey man, could you get a few less A's to make me look better? Yeah. So, well, I think essentially what's going to happen is that everybody's eventually going to have to get A's, right? Because once the F is gone, the D now becomes the great identifier of systemic racism. So eventually the D goes, then the C. Nobody likes the C anyway.
No, actually, you got to keep the C. You take away the A and B because those are grades of privilege. And if only those with privilege get those grades. So the C, we're just going to have a C.
Well, that's what's going to happen. We're all going to be average all of a sudden. We're all going to be forced to the regression to the mean. We're all just going to be average. We're no longer going to, unless you're an elite culture, unless you come from, a certain side of Manhattan and you're destined for Harvard or Yale. You're not going to be identified as a higher IQ. You're not going to be identified with strengths that put you above the average. There's going to be a regression, just a natural regression to the mean, or forced regression to the mean by this leftist BLM type culture that says that any type of identifier of excellence or exceptionalism is somehow systemically racist. We all suffer in that scenario.
We can't do C. Caucasian. C starts Caucasian. Maybe we can make B C for BLM. So we'll all just get B's for BLM. Oh, but then if a white kid gets a B, it's cultural appropriation.
Well, remember in elementary school when you got an S for satisfactory?
There you go.
There you go. So we bring back the S. We get rid of the C.
No. Slave starts with S.
Right.
We can't do S.
The original sin. The original sin.
Here's what we need to do. We need to just get the white kids out of the school because they're oppressive, and just let black people go to school.
That's happening on some college campuses.
They're segregating.
Look at Evergreen State when they kicked all the white kids off of campus, and the Weinsteins lost their jobs. The Columbia's got segregated graduations and dorms. That's a possibility. They might just decide to keep whites out of school altogether.
Can you believe that we've so quickly gone back to school segregation, but we're calling it a good thing now? Not we, crazy society at large, and people actually see segregation as a good thing and progress when it's going back to what was fought for.
Yeah.
It was people going to desegregate. Oh,
it's pretty insane.
It's unbelievable.
Well, you could see that we're kind of heading. So in the 1950s, for instance, like you had segregated, like for instance, like Major League Baseball was white and the Negro leagues were where the black players would play. So we came, we went through the 60s and Martin Luther King and Jackie Robinson was the first colored baseball or first black baseball player, and God bless him. And we have a awesome, Major League Baseball today because of that. But now we're faced with the idea of possibly going back to segregated everything because of these flash in the pan Kendys and D'Angelos of the world that think that there's such a thing as systemic racism. That right there proves that the construct is flawed and dangerous.
And you young kids who weren't alive at the time, and I wasn't either, but we used to learn history, and a history that was a little more true.
Back in my
day, when Jackie Robinson came out on the field, white people would yell the N-word, and little white kids sitting next to their parents might yell it too and thought it was okay because baseball had been segregated and society had been segregated, and not all white people were racist and ugly like that. But there were white people that thought it was okay for adults and kids to yell that to a black man who came on the field. Because we desegregated baseball, now when you watch baseball, there's black people, white people, Asians, Latinos. And if any father, son, mother started screaming the N-word at a player in a stadium, that person would become a pariah and would be lucky to get out of there unscathed. But now you're trying to segregate again. That is something we came past.
Yeah. Yeah. They've shut soccer games down in Europe because of that tendency. So yeah. And by the way, racism does exist outside of America. So, they would be pariahs and rightfully so. I mean, it's a horrible sentiment to espouse or to let slip. So
segregation encourages racism. It tribalizes and encourages racism. It's not a good thing.
So this elimination of F, that's what this leads to. It leads to a disillusion of all that is good, all the values that make us truly exceptional as a nation. It's so toxic. Let's fight it, guys. It's anti-God, it's anti-Christian, it's anti-America.
Yeah, keep Fs in school.
Hey, we're 3 Fers.
Keep it in Minnesota. Hey, there you go.
We're the 3 Fers, so we need Fs.
Cultural appropriation.
Gosh, and Fs are so useful, man. Whenever I would get, I mean, I've gotten a few Fs in life. Yes, and when I get it, it infuriated me. It made me change it got the message across. Some students that, I realize some students don't care about school and an F wouldn't faze them. And that's a whole other issue altogether. That's a parenting issue. That's a big issue that you need to intervene with. But a student that's there to learn, an F will right the ship. And without it, nothing.
Yeah.
So, all right. That's it for that episode. We'll get back to another rip from the headlines here coming up.
If you could go down to the comments and give us a grade on how you thought we did, somewhere between an A and a D.
Yes.
And the comments.
Don't go there with the F.
No Fs, you racist.
All right. Love you guys.
Love you.
For exclusive content and bonus footage, please subscribe to our Patreon page at patreon.com/3F community. That's patreon.com/3F community. We'd love to have you join the family.